Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to why African Americans leave Africa after moving there. Now, this is good. It's quite an interesting one because I've lived in Africa for a year. So when I was 10 years old, my parents took me and my siblings back to Nigeria for just under 11 months, just so we could absorb the culture, learn a little bit about, where my parents are from and our ancestry is from and stuff like that. And, just basically learn about Nigeria. And at the time, obviously, it was a major culture shock for me going from London to Nigeria. But looking back, I'm really glad I did it. Honestly, so many great memories from that time. But I can understand if I did that now as an adult with no previous experience, any expectations, no idea really what to expect. Like if I was going from London and I thought I can expect the same, kind of systems that are in place here to be over there, you're just not going to get that. Like even in the most developed cities in Nigeria, which are Abuja, Lagos, Lekki, it's not London. It just isn't London. You're going to have a great time there, but it's just not London. So if I went there expecting it to be like it, I would be disappointed. So from that perspective, I can see why a lot of African Americans may not enjoy their time in Africa. But I would have thought that if you had decided to move to Africa, you'd done some research about where you're going to go. You've probably been there on vacation at least once or twice. If you've not done that, I think, you've just wasted your own time and money. So this is going to be quite an interesting video, I think.
2019 marked the year of return and 400 years since the arrival of the first slaves to the U.S. This coincided with the call for African Americans to return to their homelands. And since then, thousands of Black Americans have in fact been paying heed to the call and making the move to Africa. Most of the diaspora have been moving to Ghana. But many others have also moved to places like Senegal, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Rwanda, and South Africa. The reasons for leaving the U.S. transcend an ancestral calling. For many, it's the fractured race relations and an existential trauma that exists in the African American psyche since slavery. This all came to a boiling point after the murder of George Floyd in 2020. For many, it was a wake-up call that America wasn't really where they belong, and so they packed their bags in search of more welcoming lands. For many, their new home in Africa was blissful. A warmer climate, a lower cost of living, better quality food, and a sense of belonging, without the day-to-day challenges of both subtle and more overt racism that confronted them in America. However, not everybody had the soft landing they were hoping for.
As expected.
In this video, we'll look at why some African Americans end up returning to the U.S. after making the move to Africa. We've found that there are 4 main reasons.
I feel like if you're from the US, really, you want to be in a situation where either your job is completely remote, like maybe you're a tech worker, so that you can still earn a good salary, a good US salary, but live in Africa, or maybe you've saved up a good amount of money and you want to start a business, whether it's restaurant or, a hotel. You basically, I think, need to be very, very smart about your income before you make such a move, because although there are, people do have jobs in West Africa, at least Nigeria, for example, the market is nowhere near what it is in the West.
Keep watching until the end, as reason number 4 will surprise you. First up, no jobs.
Yep.
Many African Americans hold the misconception that when they arrive in whichever African country they move to, that they'll be able to easily get a job.
Nah.
This simply isn't the case. Unlike the U.S., jobs in most African countries are scarce, with unemployment rates sometimes being as high as 50%.
Yes.
Western world conveniences.
And those jobs that do exist, unless you're working in oil and gas or something that surrounds the, minerals like oil, things like that, natural resources, the pay is just not great at all.
A lot of the diaspora often fail to recognize how cushy their lifestyles are in the West. Only when arriving in Africa do they realize what they've taken for granted. Simple examples include basic road infrastructure with sidewalks.
Yep.
A lot of African countries may have tarred roads, but often don't have sidewalks. This means that walking from A to B often isn't an option. So you find yourself driving or taking taxis everywhere.
Yeah.
Another example.
And the traffic in Nigeria can be awful. If you think traffic in America is bad, you know, wait until you get to Nigeria, where there's basically no train service, like basically no bus service. Everybody drives. So it's just like, it's crazy.
Is online shopping. In the US, one can buy an item on Amazon using one-click checkout and it'll be with you later that day. E-commerce may well exist in Africa, but getting an item delivered to you may not be possible. This is because many parts of Africa don't have traditional addresses. The houses don't have names or numbers, and street names often don't exist. As a result, people often have to revert to providing landmark references, such as the yellow house opposite the post office next to the park.
I wanted to make one point also. It's like, and that's getting back to food or things you purchase. I'm noticing this is what I did in the States. When I got, like, we drink almond milk or certain dairy products or certain things, I was used to them lasting, once I opened them, like 9 days. What's different here with the product we got? It lasts maybe 5. It says it on the carton just like it does in the States. But those are the things you have to look into, because when I first got here and I got the almond milk, I didn't think about it. I just started keeping it for the amount of days I was used to. And I said, oh, I need to read this and see what it says. And I'm realizing it's the less amount of days. And so those are the things you have to look at too. Things that maybe you were used to getting of certain products that maybe had an expiration date different.
That's interesting. Why is that?
Here. So just little.
For some,
maybe it's the ingredients that are used. Maybe it's the storage.
folks, not having these Western conveniences is more important than they realized, and before long they start to miss the comforts of American living and end up moving back. Culture. African Americans often erroneously believe that when they move to Africa, they'll fit right into the culture like a hand in a glove. This is very rarely the case. Although their ancestors may hail from the African country they have moved to, being so many generations removed from this country means that culturally they have very little in common with these people.
Yeah, and it will take a while to, basically assimilate. I think learning the language of whatever country that they move to would go a long way, a long way.
Don't be expecting grits and deep fried chicken in Ghana. There aren't going to be any gospel singers in Senegal. Many people in Africa have never heard of Steve Harvey and don't care. The ones who try and adapt can sometimes make it work, but culture is a complex thing which is hard to articulate into words.
It is, yeah.
It's also a feeling, and sometimes that feeling for African Americans in Africa just isn't there.
Here in America, you have selected different types of foods. If you want Mexican, if you want Italian, if you want Jamaican, if you want all of these different types of foods, when you get to Africa, those areas who have that, if they have that, are going to be tremendously high to eat at.
Lack of choice. America is perhaps more the land of plenty than the land of the free. You never have a lack of choice when making a decision in America. If you want to book a flight from New York to Los Angeles, you can choose from more than 6 different airlines. In most African countries, you may only have one airline to choose from.
Yep.
If you want to furnish a house or apartment, you have a cornucopia of choice when it comes to sofas, rugs, and tables and chairs. In Africa, this choice will most certainly be more limited.
Unless you import everything in, and then that will come at an extra cost to you.
Lack of choice makes things more one-dimensional and also will invariably mean that prices on goods and services will be greater.
Then you want to go ahead and buy the items that you're so used to, whether it's dishwashing liquid, whether it is clothing, whether it is, whether it's cleaning items, whether it is,
basic
the
stuff.
food, or whether any item that's got to be imported in, it is going to be a task on your pockets.
All in all, every country has its pros and cons. Through trial and error, many African Americans have found a new home in Africa. For some who have moved over there more flippantly, African living has often not met their expectations and they've ended up moving back to the States. The moral of this video is to do your homework and plan effectively before deciding to up and leave the US for Africa.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. To me, and I'm sure to most of you, making such a big move like that, you would never do it without really, really planning it and thinking about it for a long, long time. You know, you're moving to another continent, you know, a continent that is nowhere near as developed as it is, you know, from the one that you've come from. So I would have at least, like, for me to consider moving to another country, like, I would need to have visited that country, honestly, at least twice, minimum twice. And the second time I would spend like a month there. You know, ideally I would spend more time, but if it's, you know, quite far away, like if it's somewhere like Australia or something like that, I would need to, you know, spend a decent amount of time there. So I can't believe, like, to make a decision like just like that, oh, I'm going to move to Africa, you know, without doing any research, thinking really thoroughly about how you're going to make money, you know, the kind of culture that you're going to try and assimilate into, the kind of food that you're going to want to eat over there. Yeah, you got to really be, you got to be strategic and really think these things through. So I can understand why people would regret it, but I'm sure that the people that really thought about this, I'm sure that the percentage of people that regret the move is quite small. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.